And I watched friend after friend get married, and I cried out to the Lord, and I cried out to the Lord, and no answer, no answer, except I kept hearing, be satisfied in me. So I'd be satisfied in him for a little while, and then that'd get put on the back burner, and my frustration would be put on the front burner, so it went back and forth, back and forth. And then I went on a teen missions team, and God brought Paul into my life. I wasn't that impressed with him at the beginning. I thought he was egotistical. But we had a rough summer. That was the year one of our kids died on the day we flew home. But it was a good summer. The next year, in 84, no, it was 85 or 86. I don't remember. Had to have been 86, yes. He went to Kenya, and I went to Indonesia. And I had spent the year at Moody Bible Institute, and on weekends, sometimes I would go to Paul's house. And, no, that was 84. Okay, sorry. 84, he came to see me and asked me to marry him, and I said no. Dum, dum, dum. Sometimes it's the right person and not the right time. Then Paul went to Kenya, and I went to Indonesia, and we debriefed in Israel. And I am a Presbyterian, and God does not speak to me, okay? But he spoke to me that summer, and he told me that I was going to marry Paul. And I'm like, I'm not listening, because you don't speak to me, and that is Satan, and you're just trying to get my hopes up, and da-da-da. And I said, okay, God, if it's your will for us to be together, have him write me. Don't do that. He wrote me, but the missionary kept our letters because he was mad at our leaders. So I never got the letter. So we get to Israel, and his team is there, and our team pulls up, and I see Paul, and I hide behind the luggage like an idiot. And they help us get all of our luggage in and everything. And the night of the banquet, overlooking the field where David killed Goliath, he asked me to marry him. So God has such a sense of humor. And he likes to surprise me. And those of you who know me know that I don't like surprises. If I am reading a book, I read the last chapter before I read the first. If I am watching a series on TV, I will go, and I miss it, I will go and find out what the recap was before I watch the show. I just don't like surprises, but he does that to me. After we got married, we had about 7 years of infertility, and again, that was extremely hard. Miscarriages, tubal pregnancies. The doctors essentially said, you're never going to get pregnant. So we started the process of adoption, and God blessed us with Lindsay. But probably the week before we left to go pick her up, I did a pregnancy test, and I was pregnant. And we didn't tell anybody because we were afraid they would take Lindsay away from us. But then we went to pick up Lindsay, and then we got Colton, and then there was Danae, and then there was BJ, and there will not be any more. And I remember my doctor saying, why couldn't this have happened after Danae was born? Why couldn't this have happened years ago? And I said, but then we wouldn't have had Lindsay. And again, God's sense of humor by giving us the kids the way he did. The last and current period of silence is where Lindsay is spiritually. And this breaks our hearts. I cry out to the Lord every single night. I fall asleep crying out. Stop it, Beth. Cry out to the Lord, praying and waiting on God to work. And it's been 7 years or 8 or 9 years of silence here. So what do I do in this silence? Knowing me, I pout, I yell, I cry, but I'm also clinging to him and his sovereignty. And Steve and I were talking the other day about his upcoming team and how remote they're going to be. And I brought up the fact that God is sovereign. And he said, no, don't be so trite with that. And I probably did sound trite, but I'm not trite with God's sovereignty because that's the one thing I'm clinging to. In this journey that we're going through now, I know he is in control, and I know he can change things at any time. I know he loves me. I know he loves Lindsay, and he's not going to withhold any good thing from either one of us. But a lot of times what I know up here, it doesn't get here. So I have to keep telling myself this and keep telling myself, and hopefully it will get its way down to my heart, and I will believe it. So I'm going to read you an article, and I know some of you may not like this, but that's okay. The name of the article is When God Seems Silent. It's by John Bloom on Desiring God. God can be maddeningly hard to get. When God says that his ways are not our ways, he really means it. We have these encounters with him where he breaks into our lives with power and answers our prayer and wins our trust and waters the garden of our faith, making it lush and green. And then there are the seasons when chaos careens with apparent carelessness through our lives and the world. It leaves us shattered, or an unrelenting darkness descends, or an arid wind, which we don't even understand, blows across our spiritual landscape, leaving the crust of our soul cracked and parched, and we cry to God in our confused anguish, and he just seems to be silent. He seems absent. That's why tears tend to flow when I listen to Andrew Peterson's song, The Silence of God. I know what Andrew means when he says, it's enough to drive a man crazy. It'll break a man's faith. It's enough to make him wonder if he's ever been sane. When he bleeding for comfort from thy staff and thy rod, and the heaven's only answer is the silence of God. The same thing happens when I listen to Rich Mullins' song, Hard to Get. Do you remember when you lived down here where we all scrape to find the faith to ask for daily bread? Did you forget about us after you had flown away? Well, I memorized every word you said. Still, I'm so scared I'm holding my breath while you're up there just playing hard to get. All of God's saints, if allowed to live long enough, are led into lonely, disorienting, weary wilderness. And while there, we lament. Since these laments are often better sung than said, it's always been the poets and songwriters who help us most. Job, I cried to you for help, and you did not answer me. I stand, and you only look at me. King David, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me from the words of my groaning? Oh, my God, I cry day by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but I find no rest. Atheists tell us that the reason God seems silent is because he's absent. No one's home at that address, duh. In the silent suffering seasons, we can be tempted to believe it until we step back and take a look and see that existence itself is not silent. It screams God, as in Romans 1:20. As Parmenides said, and as Maria sang in The Sound of Music, nothing comes from nothing, nothing ever could. Believing atheism is like modern people believing in a flat earth. From where I stand, it doesn't look like God is there, right? And if you only trust your perceptions, the world looks flat. The only reason you know the world is round is because of authoritative scientific revelation and many corroborating testimonies. I don't like his long words. What we experience as God's absence or distance or silence is phenomenological. It is how we perceive it. It's how at some point it looks and feels, but it isn't how it is. Just like we can experience the world as flat when we're walking on a huge spinning ball, we can experience God as absent or distant, when in him we live and move and have our being, according to Acts 17:28. In reality, God wasn't absent or silent or indifferent at all toward Job or King David. It's just how it felt to them at the time. Nor in reality was God silent toward Andrew Peterson or playing hard to get with Rich Mullins. And when we feel forsaken by God, we are not forsaken, Hebrews 13:5. We are simply called to trust the promise more than the perception. Why the silence? But why does it need to feel this way? Why the perceived silence? Why can it seem like God is playing hard to get or like he's just standing looking at us when we're crying to him for help? I don't claim to understand all the mysteries of this experience. No doubt we underestimate the effects of remaining sin on us and our need for this discipline in order to share in his holiness. But I believe there are clues for another purpose as well, and I'll phrase them as questions. Why is it that absence makes the heart grow fonder, but familiarity breeds contempt? Why is water so much more refreshing when we're really thirsty? Why am I never satisfied with what I have, but always longing for more? What can the thought of being denied a desire for marriage or children or freedom or some other dream create in us a desperation we previously didn't have? Why is the pursuit of earthly achievement often more enjoyable than the achievement itself? Why do deprivation, adversity, scarcity, and suffering often produce the best character qualities in us, while prosperity, ease, and abundance often produce the worst? Do you see it? There is a pattern in the design of deprivation. Deprivation draws out desire. Absence heightens desire, and the more heightened the desire, the greatest its satisfaction will be. It is the mourning that will know the joy of comfort. It is the hungry and thirsty that will be satisfied. Longing makes us ask, emptiness makes us seek, silence makes us knock. Deprivation is in the design of the sage. We live mainly in the age of anticipation, not gratification. We live in the dim mirror age, not the face-to-face age. The paradox is that what satisfies us most in this age is not what we receive, but what we are promised. The chase is better than the catch in this age, because the catch we're designed to be satisfied with is in the age to come. And so Frederick William Faber wrote in his poem, The Desire of God, "Yes, pine for thy God, fainting soul, ever pine. O languish mid all that life brings thee of mirth, famished, thirsty, and restless, let such life be thine. For what sight is to heaven, desire is to earth." Thank God for poets and songwriters. So you desire God and ask for more of him, and what do you get? Stuck in a desert feeling deserted. You feel disoriented and desperate. Don't despair. The silence, the absence is phenomenological. It's how it feels, it's not how it is. You are not alone. God is with you, and he is speaking all the time in the priceless gift of his objective word, so that you don't need to rely on the subjective impressions of your fluctuating emotions. If desire is to earth what sight is to heaven, then God answers our prayer with more desire. It's the desert that awakens a sustained desire. It is the desert that dries up our infatuation with worldliness, and it's the desert that draws us to the well of the world to come. And that's it.